Hi, this is Dustin with Dustin's Dollars. Today, I'm going to be talking again about Knightscope, specifically about how much do the robots actually cost, or if you're an investor from your perspective, how much revenue do the robots actually bring in? And I'm going to be talking about some of the factors that go into that and what the recent sales mix has been in terms of the models of the robots, and then what we can sort of gather from that in terms of answering this question for ourselves. Before I begin, let me remind you that I am not a financial advisor or a financial professional of any sort. All opinions that I express in this video are mine and do not represent those of any company or any other individual. I currently hold a long position in Knightscope. So basically this video should be for your entertainment purposes only, because I could be wrong about everything I say in this video. You need to do your own research before making any investment decisions. So if you have read through their investor presentation, you see that they actually use two different numbers of their per robot revenue. When they are talking about the overall opportunity, I see that they use this number here of $70,000 per robot annually, right? This is their potential annual recurring revenue that they are calling out here. And they have this little footnote that says that that is the average, assumed average revenue for K1, K3, and K5 combined. So let's, we'll revisit that in a couple minutes when I get into some more details. And then they also use this figure of, roughly, let's say $60,000 per year when they are going through the unit economics example. And I'm not actually sure why they use what looks like two different numbers to me. It's not obvious that one is different than the other, because I think this is also intended to be an average. Actually, they're not even that specific here. And then they also have some, this is, again, I'm going to set the stage here with what information they have provided directly. They also put this in their first half filing for 2021, I believe this is. Let me verify that. Form 1SA, yes, for the semi-annual period ended June 30th, 2021. All the way on the filings up until this point, they included a note where they said, depending on the model and or the selected offering package, we have recognized recurring monthly revenue ranging between basically $3,300 and $8,150 per robot, right? And they say this includes the actual rental of the robot, as well as maintenance, service support, data transfer, access stocking stations, and limited software, firmware, and select hardware upgrades. And then also in 2021, they added on Knightscope Plus, which is a remote monitoring service. I will say up front, I have no idea how much they charge for Knightscope Plus. I was not able to find any information for that for today's video. They also then, in their Q3 2021 filing, they changed the language here, and they simply said they have recognized recurring monthly revenues ranging between $3 and $8 per robot. And so, if you do the math there, let's see, if I'm looking, let's do 31 days in a month, 24 hours in a day, $3 per hour. That is significantly lower. Although, granted, you have to figure maybe they were, maybe they're rounding this off to $3. If I multiply by 4, that's even still below their $3,300. So I don't really know what to make of that. And then even by 8 on the upper end, that's only $5,900 per month. So that was interesting. Those numbers don't necessarily match up. But we'll kind of have to see. And then in the 10K for all of 2021, they did not actually disclose this number as far as I could tell. So that is what I could find in their filings. However, we do still have this one source of information, which is GSA Advantage. And this is for the government contractors, I think, to be able to, or for the government to be able to order from government contractors, I should say. And I've touched on this in a prior video at least once, talking about Knightscope and the federal government. But what I wanted to go over today is this is one place where we can actually see what they charge for these. And, so right now, at least I am assuming these are current, that people can actually go out and order through this right now, because this is a live website. It's listed right there. They have the K5 here that is $64.18 per month. That's what these are monthly charges as far as I can tell. and the K3 actually cost the same amount, which is a little bit surprising to me. I kind of always thought the K3 was a little bit cheaper since it's smaller and it's intended to be indoor use. Maybe it doesn't have to be as, I don't know, waterproof or weatherproof. Um, but according to this, they are the same price. Then there's also the K1 here, which is slightly less, which is $4,400 per month. And again, these numbers, the K1 is the cheapest robot that they have. And it was interesting that this number, assuming this is a monthly number, is significantly higher than that lower bound, both in terms of the cost per hour and the prior $3,300 per month figure that they had. So I thought both of those were interesting. In terms of the actual charge, was higher than what they seem to have reported, and I'm not sure. Again, I have no inside information. I do not know how to resolve the discrepancies. I'm just trying to share with you what I was able to find for myself. But then the other interesting thing is that they have these packages. The after hours package is their most expensive one. Basically has sort of people detection, signal detection, a bunch of some notification stuff. They have this one for the interactions package. I think this lets you do custom messaging and two-way messaging. I do a live intercom with the person and broadcast stuff. They have one which is a parking monitor package, right? This is monitoring parking, and it has some features directly in there related to that. This one is about $400 per month. And then they have this one, which is the Ultra HD package, they say, which I think adds 4K Ultra HD recorded 360-degree vision. And this one that I actually thought was maybe a big deal, 30 days of data storage and unlimited live stream. And I can imagine that that live stream requires Wi-Fi, but I can actually imagine that the 30 days data storage is pretty interesting. And pretty enticing, that a lot of people would want that, because when you look at this is really only by default 24 hours. And so this, I know I clicked over, but it wasn't a very good transition. But they have this, most of those results, this is again from GSA Advantage, they had this infographic, let's call it, that sort of gives those numbers at a glance and has a couple interesting tidbits here. They do show the robots here on the left. They show those packages on the right. And as I was getting to, their base package for the robots only includes 24 hours worth of data storage. And I can imagine that a lot of folks are might have reason to want to look back at things more than just a day at various points in time, and might want to just add that on. That seems interesting to me. And also the higher resolution. You see the crime shows on TV and they have their photo and you say enhance, and then they zoom in on this tiny little bit, and going to the Ultra HD would allow you to do that, presumably much more than the lower resolution. So I could see that being interesting to some people. I know that there's actually been, speaking of the parking monitoring, there have been numerous sales announcements where it was made very clear in the sales announcement that the robot was being purchased for the intention of monitoring parking. And so I have to imagine there's at least some chunk of customers that are getting the robot for that specific purpose that would want this parking monitor package. And again, about the interactions and the after hours package, I don't know. I have to imagine a lot of people probably do want the signal detection type stuff. That's part of the value of having a robot to do these things. That gives you a lot more value add rather than just it's a camera on wheels. But I don't know. I'm not in the target market for these things. I'm not a security professional, so it's hard for me to really be confident in that. But one other interesting thing, and it's barely legible to me, so it's probably not legible to you through the stream here. But there's a note here on this pricing. It says the pricing assumes a 3-year contract paid annually at signing. And note number 2 is the monthly payment plans are available at a 10% premium with the first and last month subscription fees due at signing. So these prices, unless you're signing a 3-year contract, the prices are actually 10% higher than this, at least again, as they're listed for the federal government. So I thought that was interesting, that they sort of are giving you this implicit discount if you sign a 3-year contract, and that actually these prices here are lower than the ultimate pricing for anybody who does not sign up for a 3-year contract. So I took all of that together and I took those numbers, put them here in a spreadsheet, as I like to do. And I put this together with the base K5 of their monthly costs that they showed there. This column here just shows you annualized costs for each of these things. I have the packages here, and then so you can see annually just the base K5 robot, according to those numbers, was $77,000. So you can immediately see that if we're looking back at those numbers from here, you can see that the K5 is above that average, above the 70,000, and certainly above the roughly 60,000 they use in the unit economics example. So that's I think good. And then any of these packages will just push that up even further. And I did just two hypotheticals. If they added on the Ultra HD package, right, that bumps it up from $77,000 in revenue to 80.5 on an annual basis. And then if they added on, instead of the Ultra HD package, just the after hours package, that would be roughly $83,000 per year in revenue for the K5. Now, that is if they sign a 3-year contract. If they are not signing a 3-year contract, which I think is probably not that doesn't seem to be the norm. It seems that most customers, and maybe this is out of date, maybe this pricing is, again, this is sorry, that was one thing I didn't call out. If you notice, this was pricing that was set in 2018. So they may have redone how they do the pricing since then. They don't post the pricing on their website. It's more of a business to business thing. So it's really hard to say how they do this. This may have changed, right? But this at least gives you some insight into how they were pricing things. But again, going over here, if they don't have the 3-year contract and they're doing the monthly payment there, then you can see that actually that for the K5 was more like $85,000 in revenue. And if they add on even the smallest package, it gets you up to almost $89,000 in revenue. And with the after hours package, the most expensive one, it was above $90,000. If you look at the K1, which is I'm only looking at the K5 and the K1 since the K3 was the same as the K5. You can see with the annual contract, the base amount that they would get in terms of revenue was $53,000 per year. And if they do not sign the 3-year contract, it's more like 58. And if you add on any of those packages, it bumps above $60,000 per year. Now, what I also looked at was what has been their recent sales mix. I didn't go back towards the beginning of time, but I just looked at everything that they've announced in terms of sales in 2022. Here's my raw data. If you want to skim through, this was, if I make that bigger, you can see almost all of them here. So I have a column here. This is the date that the sale was announced. This is the number of K5s, the number of K1s, and the number of K3s. And there were a couple sales where they didn't explicitly specify the model. I assume they were K5s, both because there was at least one bit in the announcement that implied it, usually a photo, a CGI photo. So it's not necessarily, it's an implication, but it's certainly not necessarily true. But also because most of their sales, as you can sort of see here, are of the K5 model. And so that was just my default. So if I look through here, you can see that in 2022, they've actually not sold any K3s, and they've only sold a handful of K1s. Most of what they have sold have been K5s. The percentages, I have the totals in this row and the percentages here, where you can actually see that of their overall sales mix so far in 2022, which is 4 months, right? So it's a third of the year. 10% of their sales were K1s, roughly, and roughly 90% were K5s. So I thought that was an interesting, sales mix. Like I kind of had a gut feel for that, but seeing the actual data here was interesting that it's almost 90% K5s, which is good because they're the higher revenue model. So that's nice. And so what I did was I looked here and I said, okay, what's their average revenue per robot? If I'm just quickly looking over here at their sales mix, and then with all those sort of packages, and I put in the prices for each robot. I have their sales mix here. If I assumed overall they do 10% K1s, 3% K5s, and 87% K5s. Sorry, did I say that right? 3% K3s and 87% K5s. The overall average, and then I also put in some assumptions for what percent of customers for each model are adding on packages. And so I put on, let's say 25% of customers add on the Ultra HD package, 20% add on the parking package, 20% add on the interactivity, and 50% add on the the after hours package. And then I sort of add those up per robot with the weighted average here. Their overall average per robot revenue would be 86,500 per robot. And then if you assume people buy more of the packages, because I think it's plausible that a lot of people get that the package that gives you the 30-day storage. If they were to do that, you would be looking, and then a couple bumping up the percentages you can see here that I have for the other packages. I don't know why that one was 25%. I did not assume that one should be 25%. But I think there's a plausible reason. Again, this is sort of like the, I'm going to say, base case, and I don't know. I'm not necessarily going to call it the bull case, maybe the optimistic case in terms of what folks are paying for. Just to give you an idea, sort of some bars in terms of what they actually could be seeing per robot, right? So when you see an announcement, what does that translate into in dollar value? That's really the question I'm trying to answer here. And so I think roughly the bar that we should be thinking about is above their $70,000 per robot figure. And I think it's somewhere, as I'm showing here, somewhere in the mid 80s to the low 90s in terms of revenue per robot. And again, the huge caveat here is that we don't actually know what their pricing is anymore. This was as of 2018, and this was for the federal government. It is possible that they have different pricing for the government than they do for private entities. It's possible that they've lowered their prices since then. We have seen a tiny bit of evidence of that in their filings. It's kind of hard to tell. I think we'll be able to deduce that over time. But it might be the right thing for them to do right now, as they're trying to grow market share. They're trying to get enough sales out there, and then they could raise prices later on as people start to actually see the value. Because I think that's as I talked about before, a lot of this is having to prove the value to folks right now. Let's see. I had a couple of notes for myself. One thing, again, we don't know how much Knightscope Plus costs, and so that is another thing that's going to drive up effectively the revenue per robot, right? Because they're only paying for Knightscope Plus if they also have a contract with the robot, but that's not really represented anywhere here. And that is everything I want to talk about today about the pricing for the robots and how much revenue that Knightscope actually sees from these. Anything on the chat? Nope, there is nothing on the live chat. So just as a reminder, if you're still watching, I do these videos on my channel usually around late, let's say 10 p.m. ish. Tonight was actually more like 11 o'clock Eastern US time. I do them live. I'm happy to have anybody hop on the stream and we can chat back and forth, get some back and forth going, and answer your questions, give you some comments, give me some feedback. Always happy to answer and chat with you in the comments after the fact as well. No big deal there. That is it though. So thank you very much for watching and have a good one.